You've got to be kidding me. The woman standing in front of him wasn't supposed to look like this. She wasn't supposed to make his chest tighten or his rehearsed jokes disappear from his tongue. Her eyes met his through the dim lighting of the restaurant, wide and uncertain, and for the first time in years, Dr. Bennett Cole forgot how to breathe. She clutched a worn purse against her side, her uniform still smelling faintly of fryer grease and desperation. Her name tag, barely visible under her jacket, read Ivy. "I'm sorry," she whispered, glancing back toward the door like she might run. "I think there's been a mistake." No mistake, Bennett heard himself say, though every fiber of his being screamed that this was exactly the kind of chaos he avoided. His friends had set this up as a prank. A blind date. A joke at his expense. He was supposed to walk in, laugh it off, take a picture for the group chat, and leave. But now, watching the way her fingers trembled against the strap of her purse, the way her lips parted like she was holding back 1,000 unsaid words, Bennett realized the joke was on him. Because he couldn't leave. Not now. Not when she looked at him like that. "Hello, my amazing family and friends. I'm so glad you're here with me again today. If you're ready to dive into another powerful story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me the country or city you're watching from. And guess what? Tomorrow, I've got another story lined up that will leave you just as captivated, so don't miss it. Now, let's get started." Bennett Cole had never believed in love at first sight. He believed in science. In precision. In the steady rhythm of a scalpel cutting through flesh to save a life. Love was messy. Unpredictable. A distraction he couldn't afford. At 34, he had built a reputation as one of the finest cardiothoracic surgeons in Portland, Oregon. His hands had restarted hearts that others had declared lost. His name appeared in medical journals. Residents whispered about him in hallways, equal parts admiration and fear. He was brilliant, and he knew it. He was also alone. Not that he minded. Solitude was clean. Relationships were complicated, full of expectations and emotions he didn't have time to navigate. His last girlfriend had left him 2 years ago, tired of coming second to his career. He hadn't mourned her. He'd gone back to work. "You're going to die alone in that big house of yours," his colleague Dr. Weston had said over lunch last week, shaking his head. "All that success and no one to share it with." "I'm fine," Bennett had replied, not looking up from his tablet. "You're not fine. You're a robot. When's the last time you even went on a date?" Bennett had shrugged. The truth was, he didn't remember. That's when Weston and the others had hatched the plan. A blind date. They'd set it up without asking him, texting him the details with a dozen laughing emojis. The restaurant. The time. Her name, Ivy. "She's perfect for you," Weston had teased. "Or maybe she's the worst match ever. Either way, it'll be hilarious." Bennett had agreed to go, but only because he planned to show up, prove he was a good sport, and then never let them pull something like this again. He'd even worn his most expensive suit, the charcoal gray one that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. If he was going to be the punchline, he'd at least look good doing it. But when he walked into Francesca's, a small Italian place on the east side of town, and saw her standing near the hostess stand, everything he'd planned evaporated. She was beautiful. Not in the polished, high-maintenance way he was used to. She was raw. Real. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, a few loose strands framing a face that looked tired but kind. She wore a faded denim jacket over what was clearly a work uniform, her jeans worn at the knees, her sneakers scuffed. And she looked terrified. "Ivy?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. She turned, and when her green eyes met his, something inside him shifted. It wasn't logical. It wasn't something he could explain in a medical journal. But it was undeniable. "Bennett?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. She swallowed hard, glancing around the restaurant like she was calculating an escape route. "I'm really sorry. I don't know what I'm doing here. My friend set this up, and I told her it was a bad idea, but she wouldn't listen, and now I'm standing here in my work clothes because I didn't have time to go home and change, and you probably think I'm a complete mess." She was rambling. It was adorable. "You're not a mess," Bennett said, surprising himself. "You're here. That's more than most people would do." Her shoulders relaxed, just a fraction. "You're not mad." "Why would I be mad?" Because I'm... She gestured at herself, her uniform, her sneakers. I'm not exactly what you were probably expecting. Bennett smiled, a real smile, the kind he hadn't used in months. Neither are you. That made her laugh. It was a small sound, barely there, but it lit up her entire face. Come on, he said, gesturing toward a table near the window. Let's sit. She hesitated, then nodded. As they walked to the table, Bennett caught the stares from a couple nearby. He knew what they were thinking. A man in a $1,000 suit sitting down with a woman who looked like she'd just finished a double shift. It didn't make sense. And maybe it didn't. But for the first time in years, Bennett didn't care about making sense. The waiter brought menus, and Ivy opened hers with shaking hands. Bennett watched her scan the prices, watched the way her eyes widened slightly, the way she bit her bottom lip. Order anything you want, he said quietly. I'm not really that hungry, she lied. Ivy. She looked up at him. Order anything you want, he repeated, his tone gentle but firm. Her eyes glistened for just a moment before she nodded. Okay. They ordered. She chose the cheapest pasta on the menu despite his urging, and he didn't push. He could tell she was the kind of person who didn't like charity, who carried her pride like armor. So, she said, folding her hands on the table. What do you do? I'm a surgeon, Bennett said. Heart and lungs, mostly. Her eyebrows lifted. Wow. That's intense. It can be. Do you like it? No one had asked him that in a long time. Most people asked how much he made, or how many lives he'd saved, or whether he'd ever operated on anyone famous. I do, he said honestly. It's the only thing I've ever been good at. I doubt that, Ivy said softly. What about you? He asked, leaning forward. What do you do? She hesitated. I'm a waitress. At a diner on 5th Street. It's nothing special. It's something, Bennett said. It's work. It's honest. Her eyes searched his face, like she was looking for the joke, the punchline. But there wasn't one. Why did you agree to this? She asked suddenly. The blind date, I mean. Bennett considered lying. Considered telling her he'd been curious, or that his friends had convinced him. But something about the way she looked at him made him want to tell the truth. They set it up as a joke, he admitted. I was supposed to show up, laugh it off, and leave. Her face fell. Oh. But I'm not laughing, he added quickly. And I'm not leaving. She blinked. Why not? Because, Bennett said, his voice low and steady, I don't want to. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full. Heavy. Loaded with something neither of them could name yet. Ivy's fingers traced the edge of her water glass. You don't even know me. Then let me, Bennett said. And for the first time all night, she smiled. Really smiled. Okay, she whispered. The food arrived, and they ate slowly, trading stories like treasures. She told him about growing up in a small town in Idaho, about losing her mom when she was 16, about moving to Portland 3 years ago to start over. She talked about her shifts at the diner, the regulars who left bad tips, the cook who sang off key songs in the kitchen. Bennett told her about medical school, the endless nights of studying, the first time he'd held a human heart in his hands. He didn't tell her about the loneliness. Not yet. But she seemed to see it anyway. Do you have anyone? She asked quietly. Family? Friends? Colleagues, Bennett said. Not really friends. That sounds lonely. It is, he admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Ivy reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. It was the smallest touch. But it felt like everything. Well, she said softly, maybe it doesn't have to be. Bennett stared at her, this woman who had walked into his life by accident, who smelled like fryer grease and hope, who looked at him like he was more than his reputation. And he realized, with a clarity that terrified him, that he was falling. He didn't believe in love at first sight. But maybe, just maybe, he'd been wrong. What would you do if you met someone who felt right, but your whole life said they were wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The rain started just as they left the restaurant. Soft at first, then steady, drumming against the sidewalk like a heartbeat. Bennett stood under the awning, watching Ivy pull her jacket tighter around herself. I should get going, she said, glancing down the street toward the bus stop. "Let me drive you home," Bennett offered. "You don't have to." "I want to." She looked up at him, rain catching in her hair, and nodded. His car was parked 2 blocks away. A sleek black sedan that probably cost more than she made in a year. She climbed in carefully, like she was afraid to touch anything. They drove in silence for a while, the city lights blurring past the windows. Bennett's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. He didn't want the night to end. Didn't want her to disappear into whatever small apartment she lived in and become just a memory. "Turn left here," Ivy said quietly. He did. The neighborhood changed. The buildings grew older, the streets narrower. She directed him to a rundown complex with peeling paint and a flickering streetlight out front. "This is me," she said, her voice small. Bennett pulled into the lot and turned off the engine. The silence felt enormous. "Thank you," Ivy said. "For tonight. For not leaving." "Thank you," Bennett replied, "for staying." She reached for the door handle, then stopped. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why were you really there tonight? I mean, beyond the joke. You could have walked out the second you saw me. But you didn't." Bennett turned to face her fully. The dim light from the dashboard cast shadows across her face, making her eyes look even deeper. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I saw you and something just stopped. Like everything I thought I knew didn't matter anymore." Ivy's breath caught. "That's crazy." "I know. I felt it too," she whispered. The space between them seemed to shrink. Bennett could smell her shampoo, something floral and cheap and perfect. Could see the way her pulse fluttered at her throat. "Ivy," he began, but she was already leaning in. The kiss was soft. Tentative. Her lips tasted like rain and hope, and Bennett felt something crack open inside his chest, something he'd kept locked away for years. When they pulled apart, her eyes were wide. "I should go," she breathed. "Can I see you again?" "I work tomorrow. Evening shift. Then I'll come by." "Bennett, you can't just show up at a diner. You're a surgeon. You probably have important things to do." "Nothing's more important than this," he said, and he meant it. Ivy stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. Then she smiled, that beautiful, heartbreaking smile. "Okay," she whispered. "Tomorrow." She slipped out of the car and hurried toward the building. Bennett watched until she disappeared inside, then sat there in the parking lot, his heart racing like he'd just run a marathon. He didn't believe in love at first sight. But he was starting to believe in her. Bennett didn't sleep that night. He lay in his king-sized bed in his empty house, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Her laugh. Her eyes. The way she'd looked at him like he mattered. By morning, doubt had crept in. What was he doing? She was a waitress. He was a surgeon. They lived in different worlds. His colleagues would mock him. His parents, if they were still speaking to him, would be horrified. And what could he possibly offer her besides money? He didn't know how to do relationships. Didn't know how to be soft. He almost talked himself out of going. Almost. But when evening came, he found himself driving across town, pulling into the parking lot of Rosie's Diner, a squat building with a faded sign and grease-stained windows. Inside, the place was nearly empty. A few truckers at the counter, an elderly couple in a corner booth. And there, behind the counter, was Ivy. She looked up when the bell chimed, and her entire face transformed. "You came," she breathed. "I said I would." She glanced around nervously. "My boss doesn't like it when we chat with customers too long." "Then I'll order something." He slid onto a stool at the counter. She handed him a laminated menu, her fingers brushing his. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please." She poured him a cup, her hands steadier than last night. "The meatloaf's good today. So's the pie." "I'll take both." She wrote it down, then hesitated. "Bennett, about last night." "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "No. But I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of this. Of you. Of how fast this feels." Bennett set down his coffee cup. "I'm scared too." Her eyes lifted to his. "Really?" "Terrified." That made her smile. She turned to put his order in, and Bennett watched her move through the diner, refilling coffee, clearing plates, laughing with the cook. She belonged here. Comfortable in her own skin in a way he'd never been. When she brought his food, she leaned against the counter. So what do you do when you're not saving lives? Honestly? Not much. Work, mostly. That's sad. I know. You should have hobbies. Friends. A life. I'm working on it, he said, looking directly at her. She blushed. The door chimed again. A man walked in, tall and broad, with a sneer that made Bennett's jaw tighten. Well, well, the man said, sliding onto the stool next to Bennett. Didn't know this place attracted your type. Ivy's expression shifted. What do you want, Kyle? Just coffee, sweetheart. Same as always. Bennett didn't miss the way Ivy's hands shook as she poured. Didn't miss the way this Kyle person stared at her. You working a double again? Kyle asked. That's none of your business. Still living in that dump on Archer Street. Kyle, just drink your coffee and leave. I'm just saying, you could do better. I told you I'd help you out. I don't need your help. Bennett's fork clattered against his plate. Both Ivy and Kyle turned to look at him. Is there a problem? Kyle asked, his voice dripping with challenge. Just wondering if you always talk to women like that, Bennett said evenly. Kyle's eyes narrowed. Who the hell are you? Someone who knows how to respect people. The tension crackled. Ivy stepped between them. Bennett, it's fine. Kyle was just leaving. Kyle stood slowly, tossing a crumpled bill on the counter. Yeah, I'm leaving. But Ivy, we're not done talking. Yes, we are, she said firmly. Kyle shot Bennett one last glare before walking out. The diner felt too quiet. I'm sorry, Ivy whispered. Who was that? My ex. Sort of. It's complicated. Bennett's chest tightened. Did he hurt you? Not physically. Just, he thinks he owns me because he helped me once. Gave me a loan I'm still paying back. How much do you owe him? Bennett, don't. How much? She closed her eyes. $3,000. I'll pay it. Her eyes flew open. What? No. Absolutely not. Why not? Because I don't need you to rescue me. I'm not some charity case. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Bennett stood, pulling out his wallet. He left $200 on the counter. I meant that you deserve better than him. Better than this. He walked out before she could respond. Bennett made it halfway to his car before he heard her voice. Wait. He turned. Ivy was running toward him, her apron still on, her eyes blazing. You don't get to do that, she said, breathless. You don't get to just throw money around and walk away. I wasn't trying to insult you. Well, you did. They stood there in the parking lot, the neon sign buzzing overhead. Bennett ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to be around someone like you. Someone like me? Someone real. Someone who doesn't care about what I do or how much I make. Someone who makes me feel like maybe I'm not just my job. Ivy's anger softened. Bennett. I messed this up, didn't I? She stepped closer. Yeah, a little. Can I fix it? She studied his face, searching for something. Then she sighed. You can try. How? Stop trying to fix everything with money. I don't need a hero. I just need. She trailed off. What? Someone who sees me. Bennett's throat tightened. I do see you, Ivy. That's the problem. I can't stop seeing you. Her expression crumbled, and before he could think, he closed the distance between them and kissed her. This time it wasn't soft. It was desperate, full of everything he couldn't say. When they broke apart, she was crying. Come on, she whispered. Let me show you something. Ivy took him back to her apartment. It was small, just one room with a kitchenette and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was clean. Tidy. Personal. There were books stacked on a makeshift shelf. Plants in the window. Photos taped to the wall. "This is me," she said quietly. "This is my life." Bennett walked slowly around the space, taking it in. He stopped at the photos. A younger Ivy with a woman who had her same smile. Her mom, probably. "She died of cancer," Ivy said from behind him. "We didn't have insurance. The bills buried us. That's why I'm here. Why I'm still paying off debts. Why I work doubles and eat ramen and can't afford to dream." Bennett turned to face her. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." She laughed bitterly. "I'm broke and tired and one bad shift away from losing everything. That's not strong." "Yes, it is." "Why are you here, Bennett? Really?" He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human. Not a surgeon. Not a success story. Just a person." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm going to ruin your life. Or save it." She kissed him then, pulling him close, and they sank onto her second-hand couch, holding each other like they were the only two people left in the world. The next few weeks were a blur. Bennett rearranged his schedule to see her. He'd never done that for anyone. He showed up at the diner during her breaks, brought her coffee, learned the names of her regulars. She opened up slowly, telling him about her childhood, her dreams of going to college, her love of old movies. He told her about his parents' divorce, the pressure to succeed, the loneliness that had shaped him. They were from different worlds, but somehow they fit. One Saturday, he took her to the coast. They walked along the beach, barefoot in the sand, laughing as the waves chased them. She looked so free, so alive, and Bennett realized he'd never been this happy. "I could get used to this," she said, leaning against him. "Me too. Your friends must think I'm crazy." "I don't care what they think." She looked up at him. "Yes, you do." He didn't answer, because she was right. That night, they lay tangled together in her small bed, the moonlight streaming through the curtains. Ivy traced patterns on his chest. "What happens when this ends?" she whispered. "Why does it have to end?" "Because you're you and I'm me. Eventually, reality's going to come knocking." Bennett pulled her closer. "Then we don't answer." She smiled against his skin. "I wish it were that simple." "It can be." But deep down, he knew she was right. The world outside this room wouldn't be kind to them. And sooner or later, they'd have to face it. The reckoning came on a Tuesday. Bennett's colleagues had noticed his absences. The missed meetings. The distracted looks. Weston cornered him in the break room. "Who is she?" he asked, grinning. "None of your business." "Come on. The blind date actually worked? That's hilarious." "It's not a joke anymore." Weston's grin faded. "Wait, you're serious? You're actually seeing her?" "Yes." "Bennett, she's a waitress." So you're Dr. Bennett Cole. You can't just date some random woman from a diner. What will people think?" Bennett slammed his coffee cup down. "I don't care what people think." "You should. Your reputation matters. Your career matters. She matters more." Weston stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. But that night, when Bennett showed up at Ivy's apartment, ready to tell her he didn't care what anyone thought, he found her crying. "What happened?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "Kyle came by the diner again. He said if I don't pay him back by the end of the month, he's going to take me to court. I don't have it, Bennett. I've been trying, but I just don't have it." "I'll pay him." "No. Ivy, please." "I said no." She pushed him away. "Don't you get it? I can't be the girl you save. I can't be your project. I need to do this myself." "Why? Why does it have to be so hard?" "Because if I let you fix everything, I'll lose myself. And then what am I? Just some poor girl who got lucky." Bennett felt something crack inside him. "That's not how I see you. Maybe not now. But eventually you will." "That's not fair." "None of this is fair," she shouted. "You walk into my life looking like some perfect dream, and I'm supposed to what? Pretend we're equals? We're not. Bennett. We never will be. The words hit him like a punch. So that's it? You're just giving up. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward. Her face went pale. Get out. Ivy. Get out. He left, slamming the door behind him, his heart in pieces. A week passed. The longest week of Bennett's life. He threw himself into work, performing surgeries with mechanical precision, going through the motions. But everything felt hollow. Weston tried to talk to him. You okay, man? Fine. You don't look fine. I said I'm fine. But he wasn't. He was miserable. And angry. Angry at Ivy for pushing him away. Angry at himself for not fighting harder. Angry at a world that made love so complicated. On Friday night, he found himself parked outside Rosie's diner. He didn't go in. Just sat there, watching through the window as Ivy moved between tables, her smile forced, her eyes tired. She looked as miserable as he felt. And suddenly, he knew what he had to do. He drove to Kyle's address, information he'd gotten from a quick search. The guy lived in a decent apartment complex across town. Bennett knocked on the door. Kyle answered, surprise crossing his face. We need to talk. About what? Bennett pulled out his checkbook. About Ivy's debt. I'm paying it off. All of it. Tonight. Kyle's eyes narrowed. She put you up to this? She doesn't know I'm here. And what do you get out of it? Nothing. Except the satisfaction of knowing she's free of you. Kyle stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. You really care about her, huh? More than you ever did. Kyle's expression hardened, but he named a figure. Bennett wrote the check without hesitation, tore it out, and handed it over. We're done here, Bennett said. Yeah, Kyle muttered. We are. Bennett drove straight to Ivy's apartment. It was late, almost midnight, but he didn't care. He knocked on her door until she answered, her hair messy, her eyes red. Bennett? What are you doing here? I paid off your debt. Her face went white. You what? I paid Kyle. You're free. I told you not to. I know. But I did it anyway. Why? Why can't you just listen to me? Because I love you. The words burst out of him, raw and desperate. I love you, Ivy. And I don't care if that's crazy or too fast or doesn't make sense. I love you, and I'm not going to stand by and watch you drown when I can help. She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. You love me. Yes. You barely know me. I know enough. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. Bennett stepped forward, pulling her into his arms. I'm scared, she whispered against his chest. Me too. What if this doesn't work? Then at least we tried. She pulled back, looking up at him with those beautiful broken eyes. I love you too. God help me, I do. He kissed her, pouring every ounce of emotion into it. And this time, when they pulled apart, they were both smiling through their tears. 6 months later, Bennett stood in front of the hospital board, his resignation letter in hand. You're sure about this? The chief asked. Completely. You're one of our best surgeons. I know. But I need to do this. He walked out of that building feeling lighter than he had in years. He'd found a new position at a smaller clinic, one that served low-income families. The pay was less, the hours still long, but the work felt meaningful in a way his old job never had. And every night, he came home to Ivy. She'd enrolled in community college, pursuing a degree in social work. She still worked part-time at the diner, but now it was a choice, not a necessity. They'd moved in together, into a modest apartment that was nothing like his old house, but felt more like home than anywhere he'd ever lived. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching an old movie, Ivy curled against his side, Bennett realized something. He'd spent his whole life chasing success, thinking that was what mattered. But he'd been wrong. This mattered. She mattered. They mattered. What are you thinking about? Ivy asked, looking up at him. How lucky I am. She smiled. I'm the lucky one. We both are. She kissed him softly. Yeah, we really are. Outside, the rain started again, drumming against the windows. But inside, they were warm. Safe. Together. Bennett had never believed in love at first sight. But he believed in second chances. In taking risks. In the woman who'd walked into his life smelling like fryer grease and hope, and changed everything. He believed in her. And that was enough. So here's my question for you. Have you ever met someone who made you rethink everything you thought you knew about yourself? Someone who challenged you to be better? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Tomorrow, I've got another story that's going to stay with you long after it's over. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth fighting for. See you tomorrow.